All right, how's it going, you guys? This is the Nomadic Podcast, a podcast of friends and future family. My name is Grayson Taylor. I'm your host, and today I have the privilege of introducing somebody that's been coined as an impactor and influencer in the business realm. Born in a small town in New Zealand, and went to a school of only 4 kids. Has a passion for music, playing saxophone in jazz bands and numerous other bands, and went to school for the piano at Trinity Campbell University. Later in life, he found himself working over 80 hours a week at an accountant firm and thinking, man, there must be something more. So started focusing more of his time and resources into investments and business ventures on the side. And today, he's wearing the shirt for it. He can call himself a free man because he has the financial independence to retire at the age of 35 years old. Congrats on that, Jono. That's amazing. Now he has surrendered and dedicated his life to mentoring and helping others achieve success and wealth in their own avenues of their own lives. And he gets to spend the time he really wants with his wife of 11 years and 4 beautiful children. So, you know what I'm going to say? I'm taking some notes today. I hope you guys take some notes today as well. Mr. Jono Rowe, how you doing today?
Grayson, great to connect with you, mate. And thanks for the intro. It's always a little bit awkward when people are talking about you, right? But look, mate, I'm so thankful to be here and connect with you across the other side of the world, which is cool.
No, it's awesome. Hey, I mean, you've achieved some pretty amazing things, so I got to talk about it, right? It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really intrigued by your story a little bit, and I want to start with that. I know that you had to overcome some adversities and some obstacles, just like any other entrepreneur. But I know you had some struggles that you had to get through. So how did you battle and balance those struggles of adversity while on your journey towards success?
Yeah, I mean that's also a great question, and I think the first start to, well, the first point with any kind of growth and success has to come with you're really a product of the environment you're in. And for me, a handful of years ago, working in a corporate job and working some pretty crazy hours, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. And it was just kind of this consistent grind. And what I started to realize is I could see where I was going to end up in the next 10 years or so. And it wasn't necessarily aligned with my values and how I really wanted to live my life. I thought there's got to be a better way and a different way than just living in a job and working 40, 50, 60 hours a week plus. And it started to kind of pull me away from my family and things that were really important to me. And so it was the transition of good relationships in my life that helped me start to get a bigger perspective about kind of what my life really meant. And those relationships ultimately have ended up being absolutely fundamental to Kirsty and I and myself, especially personally, walking through the difficult seasons of life. And I lost my dad a handful of years ago through motor neuron disease, and just to see him kind of suffer, a man in my life who was such an amazing figure of character and integrity, a man I looked up to, and just to see him kind of deteriorate over a 5 or 6 year period really challenged my perspective on why I was doing what I was doing. And it had to go back to kind of, why the heck am I doing all these crazy hours? Why do I want to pursue this corporate career? And going back to, starting with why. Simon Sinek wrote an amazing book about it, right? It's start with why. And I think it's really important to look back on even anything we do as to ask that question, start with why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And when I asked those questions as a result of changing some of the influence in my life, it really started to give me some purpose and direction. And I guess that painful season in my life when I lost my dad, it was really that mentoring relationship from some people who really cared about me. They loved me for who I was, not for the credentials or the success that I might have had in another arena or outside of that. It was about just really going on that journey with me and really walking alongside that journey until I really understood and was ready to kind of transition and move forward and start taking action.
Right on. I always heard that today's pain is tomorrow's motivation. You're right. And, the past doesn't have to dictate your future. The foundation that you have right now doesn't mean the foundation that you're going to have in 10 years. Right. So that is really, really amazing to hear that. I want to know, so what you just talked about a little bit, you could have made some excuses. Everybody's excuses are valid, but you chose not to follow those, and you chose to have reasons why you wanted to achieve success. So how did you eliminate some of those excuses from your life and some of those battles, and what did you have to say no to, or what did you have to say yes to?
Yeah, I mean, there's some big questions there, and when you talk about the last 5 or 6 years of my life specifically, and I guess when I look back on it now, I kind of pinch myself at how significantly it's changed in such a short period of time. A short period of time, when I'm 35 years old, I think 5 years is a short period of time. Maybe not for people in their early 20s are just starting out in life and kind of moving forward. But, it was that purpose-driven life that really started to help me move forward, to keeping my eyes on the goal and the outcome that I was working towards. I had to understand really clearly about the why and the purpose that I was doing what I was doing. And I think during those seasons in the last 5 or 6 years, last decade of my life, things get tough. You don't feel like always doing what you need to do to move forward. Reading and listening and studying, having a study work habit, and those things. It doesn't always feel good. You don't always feel like doing the work that you need to do to get ahead. But having that outcome that you're working towards, that driving force of the purpose and the why, is so critical. And I guess again, when I was going through difficult seasons or periods in my life where I didn't feel like moving forward, I didn't know if I could do it, and self-belief was a big draw card or factor for me that really started to help hold me back. It was a bit of a roadblock for me. But having that perspective from people who had kind of been through that, and that's why mentorship in my life has been so important. And mentorship with the right people, right? It's mentorship with people who actually have the ability to help you move forward, and people that potentially you have earned access to that mentorship. And certainly something that Kirsty and I did. And we really pursued people who were open to spending and investing time into us. And so whenever things were difficult, whenever maybe someone was a bit negative about just anything, and family and friends sometimes negative about a path less traveled, and changing the future or the route that you're heading down when you're not doing what everyone else is doing, expecting to kind of go down a big corporate route, which was me, accounting firm. And why would you change? Why would you think about becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner? And especially even my work habit and adjusting some things in our life, we start to look a bit unusual to what most people are doing. And so to have a perspective of knowing that the changes that you're making in your life and the things that you're doing, which is so different from what most people are doing, it was always perspective. So it was staying in communication with those people. And for me, it was, mentorship with a handful of couples who could really keep my eyes on that big dream and the outcome and the perspective to make sure that I was focused on the right things during those seasons.
Right on. So you talked about something right there, taking the path less traveled. Is there a time that you can take me back to, or an age, or maybe a season that you knew, like, man, there's something more out there, and I want to take the path less traveled? And what was that? What kind of triggered you to be like, man, I'm meant to do something more. I'm meant to do something great. Can you take me back to maybe a season if you can think about that?
Absolutely. And something I share often and talk about a lot, because it was a defining moment for me in my life. And I was 27 years old. I had done about 85 hours on my timesheet that week at work, and which was about 100 hours of work when you think about the frill time around of it that's not chargeable to a client. And I came home at 3:00 in the morning. I'd done a big day that day before and a couple of big, really late nights. Came home 3:00 in the morning and saw my son. We had one son at the time. Now got four young children, but saw my son's toys kind of just there, in the corner of the room. And I was tired, I was fatigued, and I kind of had this flash forward in my life. And I had a flash forward the next 10 years of what my life was going to look like if I kept doing what I was doing. And people have flashbacks. They have flashbacks to kind of maybe difficult moments or good memories. So I had this flash forward of what my life was going to be in 10 years' time if I kept doing what I was doing. And in that moment, I had realized and saw that, man, I need to change something if I'm going to change the path that I'm heading down, if I'm going to change the outcome, which most people are heading down, and partly because we're just sort of so socialized to, expected to live one way and go to school, get a good job and some kind of degree and formal education, and then work for 40, 50 years in a job and trade time for money till we're retired. And that's kind of 90% of the population are doing that because of the whole industrial age change and revolution. And this could talk for hours around the changes in the market and everything. But it was this desire in me to go, man, I don't want to give my life up for something that doesn't feel like it's actually going to have something that's last a long term. It doesn't connect with the legacy that I thought that I was going to build and carry in my life. And a lot of that was from my dad too. He had an amazing legacy that I felt like, I was passed on to me as far as a mantle to our family, and as a man, as a father, and a husband, to really do something that really mattered. And I knew that if I kept doing this, I wasn't going to be in a place 10 years time where I was going to be satisfied with what I'd done. And I didn't want to live with regret. Like most people, well, say the surveys that people have of people at the end of their life, they look back and the number one regret is people wishing they lived a life they wanted to rather than what others expected them to live. Wow. And I just knew in my heart that if I kept doing what I was doing the next 10 years, I was going to be living a life that I was expected to live. And I started to make some changes in that season. It took a few years later to really start to get some traction and some momentum and really to develop myself a lot, and worked on my marriage and on my relationship with my kids, our family, and to learn a lot about self-image and self-belief and some of the bad habits we had, like watching sport and TV all the time, every evening, even when I was tapping away on my laptop, working late hours at home, just always working. I made a decision in my heart to change and just to go, I just decided that I was going to do something. It was a big decision. And that decision started the journey of me moving in a completely different direction, because I knew I wanted something different for my life.
Right on. Something you just said really triggered something for me. And it's, I always heard that there's two things you can chase after. You can either run from the nightmare, or you can chase after what you want. So it's what you don't want, or you can chase after what you want. And more times than what's more influential and gets you off the bed and gets you off the couch, in your potato chips, is what you don't want. If I can create that nightmare for myself, I'm like, I do not want to be there in 5 years. So that's really, really powerful. One thing that I've heard you say and talk about a lot is shining light syndrome. And man, I think for my generation, 20, 21-year-old guys or girls, even older, they have this thing called shining light syndrome. And I think this is going to be really impactful to the audience. So I want you to kind of share what that is.
Absolutely. Look, and I've been really fortunate, Kirsty and I, with a handful of mentors we've had access to, really fortunate to work with a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds. People from the early 20s right through to 40s and 50s and 60s plus. And, the mindset from that age range is really quite different, quite significant. People later in life tend to kind of be stuck in their ways and in a lot of habits, and really hard to unwind that psyche and mentality of what's so ingrained in them over decades and decades, right? So helping them kind of learn new things and really start to kind of change and unwind some of that mentality. But the younger people, and I call myself young, Grayson, and I'm a few years on from you, but 35 years old. I call my 35 and alive, man. I'm a free man. I'm hungry to grow, and I've got a lot of life left. But like in my early 20s, when I was 19, 20, 21, I was not thinking about retirement. I wasn't thinking about financial independence. I wasn't thinking about long-term success, and I certainly wasn't thinking about this concept of legacy, which I live and breathe now. It's one of our family top 3 values. Legacy. What are you doing now that's going to impact 3 generations from now? So it's really hard to understand that mindset until you get around people who just kind of start to kind of really associate that with a purpose. And the shiny light syndrome, and again, I kind of bring it up with younger people and say, hey, this is a bit of an issue for us. If you're going to earn some mentorship, if you're going to be teachable, a lot of people have a shiny light syndrome in the early 20s and even later. Like people in my in the 30s and 40s for sure. And this concept of shiny light is, you start something and a shiny light comes by, something more attractive, something more sexy, something more exciting. And so you run in another direction, a week later or a month later or even a year later or a couple of years later, and just distracted by the things that feel good or feel better. And, in New Zealand and Australia here, Grayson, and I'm pretty sure it's universal, a lot of people are attracted by the property game, property investment and share investment. People want to be equity traders and because it's really sexy and exciting, and maybe drop shipping or Amazon trader or whatever it is, right? It's an appealing type of, it's got this perception that it's sexy, like investing in property. But the problem is most people haven't got the right education. They haven't got the right tools. They haven't got the right preparation for understanding that those things in becoming successful in any arena takes a long time. It takes a lot of hard work, takes a lot of commitment, and you've got to be working with somebody, in my view, that's someone that actually knows how to help you in that arena. And so we say, well, hey, you got to give it at least 5 years. And shiny light syndrome can be a real distraction and roadblock for some people if they're not willing to think 5+ years to commit to something to help it be successful. Success doesn't happen overnight. Financial independence for Kirsty and I, the fortunate success we've had because of hard work, but because of good relationships in our life, some changes we made with our habits, with our time management, has happened over a long period of time. I'd say the last 5, 6, 7 years, not over 5, 6, 7 months. And so if we start something, and I kind of had this when I was growing up a little bit, Grayson, interested in everything. I love investing in property. We invest in real estate and growing a portfolio. I like trading shares. I like trading foreign exchange. I like the idea of starting new businesses. I want to run another marathon. I'd love to do Ironman one day. That was kind of one of my dreams. But if I do all of these different things, what I realize and understand now, I guess, is you're spreading yourself so thin, and you're really preventing yourself from mastering one thing. One of the things Kirsty and I and our organization, what we talk about a lot is, focus on one thing, focus on one or two things, one or two key things for a good significant period of time. And that's kind of what's required for it to be successful. I don't know, you probably read Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Darren Hardy's the publisher of the Success magazine. I took it over a number of years ago, and has managed to interview a lot of amazing people, and the likes of Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs and these kind of world global influencers. And one of the key things that he observed from interviewing all of these successful people in different arenas is that they focus on one thing for a significant period of time. And I think I kind of started to see that in my life. I was trying to keep fit, and keeping fit's a good thing anyway, and we should be doing that, keeping healthy and eating healthy. But problem is we want to do so many different things, and if we're not prepared well, and we're not giving something a good long-term effort, that shiny light syndrome can really distract us and prevent us from giving something the time and effort and commitment that it requires to get the result that you want from it.
Yeah, no, that is so true. I always heard that jack of all trades usually means a master of none, right? So it's that core competence, focusing on those couple flowers instead of a humongous flower garden, and you can make those so much more vibrant and bright. And the same thing with business, right? So
yes,
that's amazing. One thing that I'm really impressed with you and your wife is just your consistency to balance family and then work, and still building a business and doing investments and mentoring teams. How did you balance all those things? How do you continue to balance all those things in your life? Because you're pretty exceptional at it.
I appreciate the compliment, but I guess, again, mentorship has started that for us, but also just developing a work habit around time management, and also, Grayson, which has to be obvious for anyone who's created any kind of successes, and we've failed a lot. As John Maxwell says, fail forward. And that's what we did. Probably 5.5 years ago, Kirsty and I started to made a commitment to plan once a week together as a couple. And so we kind of made a commitment on a weekly basis to set aside at least an hour a day, an hour a week on a Sunday night for us to work well for us to plan the rest of the week out. And that pillar, that kind of structure in our life was really the start to being able to kind of really live our life intentionally in line with our values, but also to really set the week in direction as the way we wanted to live it. We weren't pressured, or we weren't controlled by other people's lack of planning or other people's expectations. We knew what we were planning ahead of time. Of course, we've got to stay flexible. Best of the flexible, as they say, because they never get bent out of shape, right? And so we had to be ready to adjust and adapt. But we put some structure in our life to plan ahead. And we're big planners. Time management has been a key skill set that we've just worked really hard at. We've failed a lot at, but it's been critical for our marriage, to make sure we're intentionally setting aside time for our relationship. And I think from what we've observed from many people we've mentored, there's something that most people don't have in their life. They're not intentionally investing into their relationship as a primary pillar in their life, and prioritizing that first, because from our family values perspective, we know that our relationship, firstly, our relationship with God is number one, and then our relationship together as a couple is the driving force. It's kind of like the concrete for the rest of our family. Our relationship with our kids, and even the people that we work with and partner with and mentor and coach, and certainly from a mentee perspective, making sure that those relationships are key. And so time management's been key. Four young children, really demanding corporate career, investing, building houses, and mentoring and coaching and partnering with hundreds of people, and developing financial independence. It's kind of like, for me, it feels like just part of my life now. But part of the changes we made early on, and I think this is probably where most people feel overwhelmed, is they're doing lots of things in their life that really are not helping them. Watching TV is a good one. I think something like the average TV watching a day in Australia and New Zealand and this is universal as well, it's about 2.5 hours a day. 51 minutes of Facebook scrolling, Grayson, a day, globally is kind of what they say. 50 minutes of Facebook scrolling, 2.5 hours of TV watching. I mean, that's a lot of time in a day where people have to readjust and to make productive with their life. And that's kind of just what we did. We started to make some of those changes. We didn't do it very well to start with, but we made a commitment to really be focused on making those changes. And for us, we've all got 168 hours a week. Think about amazing people who have made amazing impact across the world. Names I just mentioned before, like Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs. And sure, they're great minds and hungry and ambitious and just amazing people. But they've also got 168 hours a week. And so it's how they choose to allocate that 168, which really makes a difference. And so for us, we've got the same amount of time as anybody else. Often, you've got to have a lot of grace for people, especially young people, Grayson, who don't have any kids and they're single and they don't have time to do anything. Yeah. And I'm like, well, hey, I've got 4 children, jobs and careers and, building assets and cash flow and mentoring people. And it's not to say that we're amazing. We've had amazing people in our life that have helped us develop skills and keep us on track and keep us humble and help us get that perspective all the time and hold us accountable to some of the things that we're doing in our life to make sure we're living in accordance with our values, which is important to us. We've kind of made ourselves accountable by choice to people in our life who are primary influence. And so we just encourage people to think more about, their time. Think intentionally about that 168 hours. How are you spending it? How are you choosing to spend it? Are you setting aside time, to plan the next week? If we can't spend 1 hour to plan the next 167, we can't expect to be very successful and productive with those hours that we do have. And I think the same goes down to fitness and health and anything you want to achieve. Well, we have the time there. It's about prioritizing it in accordance with our values rather than what other people are really expecting and shifting onto us.
Right on. No, I mean, what's the one thing, right? You just didn't quit. Every single time you got back up, you didn't quit. I heard the other day that a winner is just a loser who tried one more time. And man, you're speaking so much to that. And, a lot of people have excuses. A lot of people have, a lot of people quit. A lot of people get down. And especially with COVID-19 right now and all the lockdowns and the unfortunate events that have happened this year, it's really hard to keep your team motivated. And, I think a lot of managers, a lot of business owners in the world just are having that trouble. How do you keep your team motivated? And you've done a really good job of inspiring your team and keeping them on the track to success. And how did you do that? How did you?
Yeah. Again, anything we say right these days, there's no original quote or stuff. We just read a lot of books and listen to a lot of amazing people. But John Maxwell says that motivation gets you going and discipline keeps you growing. And so developing those habits in your life, the discipline of reading and listening and focus and time and all those things that are critical to the fundamentals, laying the foundation. Also this year for sure has been unbelievably challenging. Kirsty and I have had some challenges this year health-wise as a family and some things that really disrupted kind of just things that we're doing with our life. But we know that everything we're going through, we're growing through or can choose to grow through. And everything that happens to us, Ed Milet talks about this. He says, and things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And we have just adopted that mindset, that mentality that everything is happening to us for a reason, and that even if it's painful, even if it sets us back, we can use that for something good. We can use it to grow through and to look back on even just perspective and experience that's going to be used in future to help others have that perspective and insight and go, hey, we know it's tough. We know sometimes there's some serious life challenges and circumstances. We work with many people who have struggled with their jobs and lost their jobs this year, and pay cuts and family mental health issues, suicide, situations like that, who are very significant life challenges. And it's painful. And, we offer our love to all those people, but also just help to walk alongside them to help them see and know that, hey, this does not set the expectation, or it doesn't set the future. As you said it here at the start, Grayson, and what happens to you in your past does not determine your future. You don't have to allow the mistakes that you've made. You don't have to allow the circumstances in your life to dictate how your future is going to unfold. And I have adopted a mentality of knowing and understanding and just embracing the discomfort sometimes when it comes with challenging seasons, that this is happening for me so that I can grow as a better leader. Everything that I'm going through, I'm learning from so that I can become a better leader down the track. My desire in my life is to make a great impact on people. I want to offer value to people as much as I can. I've got a long way to go. I've got a lot of learning to do. I make a lot of mistakes as a dad, as a husband, as a mentor. I ask for forgiveness all the time, usually in advance, because I know I'm going to make a mistake, and I just ask for grace. But we know that we can get better. We can continue to grow. We can continue to be better tomorrow than we are today. That everything I'm learning is preparing me to be the leader that I'm not ready to be yet. Impacting hundreds of people, and that we have the blessing to be able to just really influence and mentor and work with. I wouldn't have been ready for that 5 years ago. I wouldn't have had the skill set. I wouldn't have had the temperament. I wouldn't have the maturity. I wouldn't have had just the soft skills, the patience. I was super impatient, Grayson, a handful of years ago. Very choleric personality. Just learning to connect with people with different political views and different backgrounds, and just to learn to kind of find the common ground there in that relationship. I had to grow through a lot of those first years, those early years, to become the leader that I wasn't ready to be, but the leader I needed to be able to impact and influence at a greater level. And I honestly believe that's always important. Kirsty and I have a huge vision to impact a lot of people in our life. So to say, I'm 35 and alive. I've got decades and decades and decades left, God willing. And I know that I'm not ready to be the leader today that I need to be in a decade's time, but I'm going to pursue that purpose as hard and as strong as I can, so that I can do as much as I can in my life to make a difference.
Man, I hope people watching this are enjoying this as much as I am, because, man, you have a gift. You're so good at public speaking, and you just convey messages so clearly. Obviously, it took a lot of work, and it was a lot of the things you're talking about, a lot of audios, a lot of reading, and a lot of mentorship. But I am just enjoying this, and it really implores me to ask you a question I think might be tough to answer, might be easy to answer. But what if I could go down to the core of what makes you tick? What makes you excited? What gives you energy? What gets you out of your bed in the morning to get up and smash the day? What is that? What makes Jono just excited?
Yeah. Great question. And I think everyone should ask this question. Why do you? It comes back to that. Start with why. But for me, first of all, it's my relationship with my Heavenly Father. That starts with everything. And I know we work with a lot of people who don't necessarily have a faith or a different faith, and we love that. We love to work with people with different backgrounds. But for me, it's that eternal purpose. It's like, what am I doing in this life that I've been gifted with in this, hopefully 80, 90, 100 years of life, and how that's going to impact the eternity for me. And it's like God's given me giftings. He's given me some skills and give me opportunity to develop myself and put people in our life that we have a responsibility and a privilege to be able to serve. And that's really what leadership's about, servitude. And, I've fortunately got around people who have helped me understand that, and amazing leaders who have kind of been through that journey and start to understand that themselves. And so I make a lot of mistakes, like I say, Grayson, and I've got a lot of growth to go, but man, I know there's a purpose, and I was created for a purpose. I love my God. I love my beautiful wife, and I'm always trying to be a better husband. And I've got 4 beautiful children that I get the privilege of displaying the standards as a man that they will see in the men that they will become, my 3 boys and my beautiful daughter. The standards that I set will be the example that I set for my beautiful daughter, who's not even 3 years old yet. I'm already scared for her teenage years. Man, I just can only imagine the baby period. The first few months is kind of a shock to the system, Grayson, but it's easy compared to them starting to understand and ask big questions. And I know that they're always watching me. I know my children are watching me. I know people around us are watching how I behave. That's that character and integrity, right? It's how you choose to behave and operate behind the scenes when no one else is watching. And my kids get to see me every day. And I, again, have to ask for forgiveness for them as well, often, because I'm not perfect like everybody else. But man, I get the amazing opportunity to live a life of purpose. And this stuff gets me out of bed. I'm excited, financially independent. I'm so blessed to be in a position that most people never get to be in. But my 2021 next year is to live a mission and live through that mission of helping people grow and helping people make decisions around their values and to see hope for their future and to see purpose in what they're doing, and whatever that is, whether that's their career, whether that's investments, whether that's mentoring others, whether that's building business or creating a new brand. I want to encourage them that they can do anything with their life that they want to be or do. And, that's just a privilege to be able to be in that stage of life now with Kirsty and I, their young children, to live every day on purpose.
That is amazing. I know you kind of covered this a little bit. I want to end, which is one thing, and I love to ask this with every single one of my guests, and it's, what's your mission? What's your mission to somebody watching? Somebody who might not have the motivation right now, or might not have, maybe things a little bit down on their luck, things aren't going their way. What's your message to that person, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I think, for me, I read a book a number of years ago. It was one of the first personal development books I read, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, he talks about beginning with the end in mind. And he describes, and as a reader, he asks you to close your eyes and think about your eulogy at the end of your life. What are people going to say about you? What are people going to describe your life as? How are they going to talk about you and the way you lived your life? And, imagine what people are saying about you when you're not there for me, was a scary thought. That was challenging, because I don't want my kids to look back and go, man, Dad made so much money. He was so successful and traveled the world and had a huge property portfolio and all the stuff and was famous. Or, it's not about fame. It's not about recognition. It's not about status. But I want my kids and the people around me in my life, and the people look back and describe that. I want them to think about and talk about my character. I want them to talk about a man that was willing to serve people and putting others first. And look, I know my dad was the most amazing, selfless person I've ever known. And I already feel like I couldn't even live up to half of that. But I think about him every single day. And it was painful early on, but 5-6 years later, I think about him often and about the example that he set. And I want to live my life selflessly, which is why I need accountability and mentorship in my life always, to make sure I'm held accountable to be who I need to be. But that legacy of what are they going to say about my life at my funeral, and how is that going to impact and ripple the generations to come? And I would say to anybody listening to this podcast, the audience of this, is to ask those big questions. What does my life mean? What is it going to mean at the end of my life when I look back and see what I've achieved and what I've become and who I've become and the influence that I had? Or, and you don't necessarily have to impact thousands and thousands and thousands of people to be able to be a special person. You kind of just have to live in accordance with your values and do what you can with your life that you've been gifted with. And I think that legacy is really important. And to second that, Grayson, I think people should be asking the question of, who do I need to know and who do I need to get around that can help me get that perspective? Who am I listening to? Who am I taking advice from that actually has that kind of level of impact, or lives those values in my life? And that was the change for me early on. It was shifting that primary influence in my life to be around and be influenced by people who lived in accordance with values, not through wealth and success, the currency of success being money, which I thought it was, but about influence and impact and helping people grow. And I think we've got to be really careful about who we're listening to. Is it the media? Is it our friend down the road who's giving us property advice, who doesn't own any properties, who's got 20 grand of credit card debt? It's listening to someone who's got an opinion about something. Everybody's got an opinion about everything. And the internet has given a voice to people who never had a voice before, anonymous people with no names.
Right.
Bless them. But if we're going to continue to listen to people that we haven't got to know, haven't built a relationship with, we haven't had the opportunity just to dialogue, have a conversation and go, hey, is there trust here to actually appreciate the perspective that we're coming from, had an opportunity to talk about our differences, which is great. This is what we should be about. But getting around people and taking that direction from people who can actually help you move forward.
No, that is amazing. I want to figure out how this goes, but I think it's input goes to output. So input is what you get in, right? It's all what you're soaking in, what you're listening to. We're all being programmed every single day. We know it, either the news, social media, or what you're listening to, music. We're all being programmed. So input to output to character, what you're doing behind closed doors, character to destiny, destiny to legacy. So, man, you just put all those things together right there. You did it in such an eloquent fashion. I am very, very excited. I wish we had more time today, but we're just getting to our timestamp here, about 35 minutes. And man, I just lost track of time. So Jono, thank you so much again for being my guest. This is the Nomadic Podcast. I'm your host, Grayson Taylor. Y'all have an amazing day. Stay up.